Do you ever see stuff you can't explain?
This came from somewhere else.
Oh, freedom, we're all going against the wind.
Life elsewhere in the universe is virtually a certainty.
CIA monkey business.
That was awful strange.
What about this?
Maybe a little bit, like just.
Is this very loud?
No, you're fine, Laura. No, it's perfect.
Am I loud?
I think it's perfect because I think you tend to be lower in general than I am.
I have a low
So it's probably better
register.
for you.
I'm a little baritone gal, you know. It's a
Yeah,
good balance.
I'm a little shrill.
If we
It
were
is.
both shrill, it would be unlistenable, I think.
And if we were both,
And if we were both
really low,
yeah, it'd be like, who are these two men? I don't want to listen to just another dude's podcast. That shit sucks.
Yeah.
Uh,
All right, you want to do this?
hey there, guys. Welcome to
Take me to your dealer.
Okay, yes, this is Take Me to Your Dealer. I'm Laura,
I am Talia.
and we're about to deal some shit to you in your ears, in your mouth ears. Gobble, gobble, gobble.
Yeah, we've got a super rough one for you guys today. I think that there's two ways to listen to this episode. You either go to a park in front of lots of people in the middle of the daytime, or you're freaks like us and you sit in a dark room and you turn off all the lights and you just scare the shit out of yourself. That's it.
Either way, you're going to be screaming a lot. So just make sure that you're prepared to scream a lot, whether that be in public or alone. I mean, I prefer in public because, yeah, just scream. Scream in front of strangers.
Yeah.
Why not? Let them know.
Yeah.
Let them know how you feel.
We're doing Dyatlov Pass, folks.
The Dyatlov Pass. The Dyatlov ass, as I like to say.
Oh, the ass of the Dyatlov.
It was the ass,
Okay.
Technically.
Yeah.
All right. So this happened late January, early February of 1959. Again, in the midst of the Cold War, all this fucking shit happens during
Yeah.
like Cold War, wartime, scary times. So just keep
Right.
that in mind if you want. You don't have to.
Right. This is 9 very experienced hikers that went on an expedition in the Ural Mountains in the Soviet
Ural?
Union. And
I thought it was Ural,
Ural?
like urinal.
I don't know.
Urinal.
The Ural Mountains in the Soviet Union, maybe?
Yeah, I think it's urinal.
And they all died under super mysterious circumstances. No one has any idea what happened to them still to this day. And it has been so insanely researched. It is like the biggest mystery to come out of the Soviet Union. It's like their Roswell.
It's their Roswell. It's their Woodstock. They don't have a lot, but they do have this. And yeah, get ready to fucking shit your pants because this is fucking so scary. I've never been more scared researching anything.
No, it's terrifying.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, basically, like, no one knows what happens to these hikers. Researchers would end up going out to try to find them. And once they do find what happened to them, there's so many more questions, as you guys will see. I mean, it just brings up more and more questions, no answers. And every single time you try to find an explanation for what happens, it seems like you just have 10 more questions now.
Yep. You're just a big old ball of confused, like all these people. I mean, they're still fucking researching it. You know, they're still like, I think it's like the kids and like relatives of these people, like still kind of dedicating their lives to uncovering whatever fucking happened. And it's just like pretty sad. We're going to try to not be very, very disrespectful to these people. It's going to be hard
it's horrible what
because I
happened.
am very disrespectful to most people, but I will reserve some of that for them because it sucks.
I mean, yeah.
Whatever happened. Like
they were all like in their early 20s.
Very, very sad.
Very nice kids by all accounts. Just because it's so confusing, there's explanations for it that range from like just random slab avalanches, like weird tiny ear tornadoes, freaking government space programs, aliens, Yetis, KGB. I mean, you name it, and that's one thing.
That's why we're talking about it, because it's like, you know, the explanation maybe isn't aliens, but it's like definitely one of the explanations, and that's like enough for us. You know, it's like at least there's some, you know, homage to aliens here, and that's why we're interested in it, because it's like, okay, maybe, could be.
Yeah, it's like everyone kind of mentions aliens as like like the fourth or fifth explanation down. So it's still pretty up there.
It's pretty up there, yes.
Why not?
Because fucking
Yeah.
it probably is, yes. But we'll reserve
Yeah.
any kind of definitive answer, just out of respect. So
Yeah.
Let's get into it. Yeah, should we kind of go down like just who were these people? Like just a little bit of a rundown of like them, the peeps, the dudes.
Let's get into it a little bit.
Dudes and dudettes.
The dude and dudettes. There was originally there was 10 students of the Ural Polytechnical Institute.
Urinal.
It was 8 boys, 2 girls. They're all very experienced hikers. They actually were all grade 2 certified hikers, and they were getting their like third grade 3 certification, which was like the highest you could get at the time.
Right. Like if they had successfully completed this hike, apparently, they would have qualified for the highest hiking certification, I guess, granted in the Soviet Union at that time.
Right.
But sadly, they obviously did not get that. So,
yeah. The names, it was obviously named after the leader of the group, Igor Dyatlov.
Yes.
Who was 23 at the time.
23.
He was a
ripe baby.
He was a very talented engineer. He was in great physical shape. He was very respected by everyone. He really they described him as a natural born leader, like someone who just like passionate, brave, all of it. And he, everyone says that the mountains were his calling. That's where he belonged. It's where he thrived. So
I believe it.
This was his team. He is the one that put together the route. He planned it, or it hadn't been previously mapped before, got it all approved, put the team together.
Yeah, this was going to be basically his this was like his baby, his project of like mapping this area now known as the Dyatlov Pass that, was just totally like unmarked territory. But was it really unmarked? I mean, clearly like the Mansi people knew about it, but we'll get into that.
Yeah, they were following Nancy trails.
Yeah, it's like
that's for later.
Wasn't totally unknown, but okay.
So we get into Yuri Doroshenko was next. He was 21 years old. It was his 4th year at the school. He was an engineering student. He has got this crazy story, which goes to show you how experienced these people were and how brave they were. He was known for, on one of his previous expeditions, he fought off a bear with a geologist hammer.
Wow. A hammer?
I guess it just wandered up and he scared the shit out of this bear. Yeah.
Oh my God.
What just lost his
What
mind
a dude's rock. Just when I thought that dudes had stopped rocking. I'm clearly just always challenged by perpetual dudes rocking. That's great. Good for him.
Yeah. Very good for him. He also, aside from attacking bears, was known for being much more reserved, a little bit more quieter than the rest of the group. He also was apparently involved with another one of the hikers in the group. They had previously dated.
Ooh, scandalous.
She had some letters home written about him.
Oh, shit.
They weren't together at the time.
Getting sexy with it. Okay.
There wasn't any like ill will or anything between them.
No.
Her name was Zenaida Kolmorgova.
Yeah, Zina for short.
They called her Zina.
Yeah.
She was 22 years old.
Yeah.
5th year radio engineer student. And every time I hear her name come up in whatever story it is, they talk about how she was so beautiful and everyone just loved her everywhere she went.
I believe it. I think they were all hot. I think
they were all hot.
Yeah, I think they were all hot. Like peak physical performance, just peak bodies, I want to say.
Yeah.
I don't really know.
They were fit.
Yeah.
She also was a tough one. She apparently at one point had been bitten by a viper on a previous expedition.
God.
And she like wouldn't even, they like tried to like take her like, I guess her like bags or whatever she was carrying. And she was just like, no. Like, no, please don't fuss over me.
Wow.
It's crazy.
Chicks rock.
Chicks rock.
Who's next?
Yuri Gravanashenko. He'll be known as Georgi in lots of things. He was 23, well respected. He came from a really rich family. They were pretty influential. He also is often referred to as like the Joker of the group. He was always trying to entertain everyone else. He brought his mandolin with him everywhere.
Oh my God, what a joker.
Brought it on this trip.
Doing his little mandolin
was a happy-
songs. Jeez. Wait, is this the guy who got detained? Right?
He did. Yeah. It was like the
we'll talk about
day
that later.
before the trip. Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Keep going down the list.
Rustam Slobodin. They call him Rustic.
Rustic. Ooh.
He was also 23.
very rustic.
Maybe rustic. Probably rustic, huh? I don't know. I guess we should point out now that neither of us are Russian, and
not yet.
I'm not really sure how a lot of these are being pronounced. I just have to go off what I've heard other people pronounce them. He was super athletic like everyone else. He was a long distance runner, described by many people as like dependable, courageous, honest, just like a good dude.
Yeah.
Good dude all around. We have Lyudmila Dubanina. They mostly call her like Lyuda or Dubanina. She was the youngest of the group. She was only 20 years old.
Oh, baby.
Fourth-year engineering student. She also has one of those crazy stories where she got shot in the leg on a previous expedition.
These are some hard fucking people, man. Jesus Christ.
20 years old.
What
So
lives
she was a teenager.
they led. Holy shit.
Yeah,
Oh
and like
my
same
God.
story as Xena. She like didn't want to cause a fuss, and she had to trek back 50 miles and just like walked, and they said that she was just cheerful the whole time. It was just like, don't worry about me. Just cracking jokes and
chicks rocking.
these are the toughest fucking people I've ever heard of in my life. This is nuts. Absolutely nuts.
Good for them.
Yeah, and then there was just a couple more. There's Alexander Kolevatov. He was 24 years old, nuclear physics student at UPI. He actually had his birthday while they were on the hike.
Oh.
And I know. And they gifted him a tangerine, which I guess was like kind of hard to get during the war. So people gifted them as like good luck or something.
He shared it with everybody.
Yeah,
he
immediately
shared
shared it with the rest of the group.
that tangerine. He didn't like greedily eat it. He like gave a piece to everybody.
No.
What a guy.
Nikolay Thibault
Brignoli. I don't know. Thibault.
He was 23. They called him Thibault. He had just graduated from UPI with a major in civil engineering, and he was like super popular at the school. Like everyone loved him, especially in like the sports circles, because he was like a real sports dude. He was known for his energy, his friendliness. People always talked about how funny he was. And then there was Semyon Zolotaryov, which is like the mysterious guy in the group. He was 38.
He's the freak hanging out with all these kids.
He's not the freak. We're not going to call him the freak under any circumstances.
Okay, yeah,
we're not
sorry.
I forgot.
I forgot. We're not being
You
very,
just
very
said we're gonna
disrespectful. We're being nothing but respectful for these poor people. Yes, okay. He was not the freak, but he was old. Like considering, like
he was
20
just down
years
for some
older
fun.
almost.
He had been
He was
in
down to
the
hang.
military for a while. Like a lot of apparently like great service in the military, although some of it is like a little weird when they look into it. Like some of it doesn't really add up.
Yeah.
But he was also covered in tattoos, which everyone keeps talking about as like a point as to why he was so sketchy, which I love. They're like, yeah, and he had tattoos, and no one has tattoos. Like
at that time, dude, yeah, probably nobody had tattoos.
Yeah.
Like, how did he get those? They're
but he was in the
definitely
military.
I don't know. Just at the time, it's like, how do you get tattoos? You got to be no.
Yeah.
I won't say it. I won't say the F word. He wasn't a freak. He
You
was
gotta
not
be
a freak.
Fun guy.
He was a fun guy. That's right. He was. We'll go with that. And then Yuri. Are we
So
talking
this
about?
is our crew.
Wait, what about Yuri?
Oh,
Yudin.
yes. Yuri Yudin is the 10th member.
Yeah, he doesn't count, but
He he didn't die. He's the only survivor of the group, and it's because he's got some rheumatism. He has some like health issues, and he ends up getting so sick on the trip that he ends up having to turn back around.
Yeah. He has like fucking nerve damage or some shit. And honestly, I bet he was like never more happy to have nerve damage, like because that is what caused him to have to leave and avoid whatever the fuck happened, you know?
I expected him to talk about that a lot in interviews, and he like never mentioned it in the interviews I heard with him. He just
oh my God, he was faking it the whole time, probably. What if he was faking it? He was just like, oh, this is just too hard, guys. Like, it's actually a lot colder than I thought it was going to be. I'm too much of a baby for this. No. Okay.
I mean, it was a cold, hard trip.
We're not being disrespectful. No, he was very tough, just as tough. It's very sad that he had nerve damage. Okay. But he died in 2013, Yuri Yudin. And yeah, I mean, he's
75 years old.
Yeah, he's gone on to say that like he does not believe that his friends died of natural causes. You know, he believes that it was, you know, they were the victims of tests, like military tests, like they.
Yeah, he blames the government.
He blames the government. So I don't know. He knew something. Maybe he got out of there because he knew something.
See.
But all right, cool. So now that we have a good understanding of who's to know, we're gonna talk now about just like the timeline a little bit. You know, just kind of leading up to the main event, the main incident. Shit got real wild. Shit got real weird. But yeah, you know, in the beginning, kind of like you said, like Igor Dyatlov, he was the leader. He wanted to route this path. He wanted to be kind of like, I mean, not famous, I guess, but like the one who like made the map of this area, right? Because it hadn't officially been mapped out.
Right.
And apparently like he wasn't really inclusive. Like he wasn't like including everybody else like in the groups, in like the plans. Did you read that? It was like he wasn't really including
didn't.
Yeah, he was like secretive about the plans, I guess. Like, I don't know, other people were like trying to like help him, but yeah, he wasn't like really that clear about like what he was trying to do. He also had like kind of a secretive relationship with Sasha Zolotarov. Like he was the one who kind of advocated for him to join.
That either.
Okay, well, this is what I saw. We read different information, I guess. That's what happens.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I
don't know. You decide.
Yeah, I just didn't.
You decide, dear listener. You decide.
Well, he got the route all approved and everything, and they were supposed to leave on the 23rd, and it was supposed to just take a couple of weeks. He said that when they get back to like the civilization, basically on the February 12th, they would like get a letter from them and know that everything was okay.
Yeah,
and so
this was planned out. It was planned out.
Oh, I mean, they had to go through like an approval process, and like,
yeah,
I think like the state had to know where they were going, and
yeah, exactly. So they weren't just like, you know, fucking throwing caution to the wind, just going out there like being all reckless. Like they really had their shit buttoned up, you know, like.
Yeah, because I saw that too, that like the school ended up getting in a bunch of trouble down the line because they just like needed to blame someone, and because they don't have any answers, they ended up blaming the school and were like, why did you guys approve such a dangerous trip for them to begin with, and started saying that it was like their fault. And yeah, it's crazy. But so there was a lot of people involved in this decision at the end of the day, basically.
Right. So yeah, they start going. I guess January 24th was like the official day that they like started on their trek, not like on the mountain itself, but like leading to the mountain. So they reached Sarov. And God, what was his name? Greg.
I think it's Georgi. I've heard them say
Georgi. That makes sense.
It looks like Georgi.
Georgi Krivonishenko was his last name. So he was detained actually during this like kind of layover, you know, as I guess you would call it. He was detained for being too rowdy. He was singing songs that were deemed to be against the USSR, apparently. So that's a little suspect, you know.
I read that he was like not, it was just the fact that he was singing that he got in trouble for, because you like weren't allowed to sing songs like that.
Right.
And he had his hat out. And if you have your hat out, then you're considered like panhandling.
Beggar. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but they might have just said that like
was,
later
like,
on.
Super communist.
Exactly.
Yeah, true.
Yeah. So they were probably just trying to like justify their own actions. Like once it became the story obviously like blew up, they were like, oh well, we just had to detain him because, you know, he was against the USSR and we can't be having that. Also like apparently on this day, like a local drunk had accused the group of stealing his vodka, which is like
and none of them drank, which was interesting.
Wait, I thought though that they like were. I don't know. I heard that they like were drinking or something. I don't know. Conflicting
Oh
info
man,
again.
it gets confusing with a lot of this stuff. I thought I read that. Yeah, like specifically, none of them were drinking on the trip. I know there was a thing about cigarettes where they like weren't allowed to smoke.
Oh,
And then
really?
the investigators ended up finding a pack of cigarettes in one of the guy's bags.
Lying.
I think they were just like trying to be good, maybe.
Maybe they were trying to
don't
have
know.
like a good like goody two shoes image, but you know, they were fucking down to party. How could they not be? How could they not be drinking on an expedition in like fucking sub-zero temperature? Like you have to fucking drink in those conditions. Like how could you not?
Maybe.
I don't know. Anyway, okay, January 25th, they take a bus to Vijay.
Yeah, they just keep getting like, you have to imagine they're getting like further and further from civilization. Like each town they stay in for the night is like less civilization.
Yeah, exactly. It's just less people,
what
less
doing there.
I get it. I pick up what you're putting down. Yeah, so less people around. There at this point they had kind of met up with this other group, I guess called like the Blinn group or something. They don't actually like travel with them. It was literally just like one night. But apparently like these people were like harassing some of the women of the Dyatlov group. That's kind of written about in some of the diaries of I think like one or two of the women.
Right.
Yeah, so that's whatever, you know, they're staying in Vizay, and then January 26th, they had to take a ride on a truck to the next destination. So they like were like, okay, we got to go. Like they kind of like hitched a ride on this fucking truck that was really shitty. It like had really bad brakes. They had to sit outside.
Yeah, with like the logging boys, right?
Exactly. Yeah, they had to sit on the truck bed. On the truck bed. They were exposed to the elements, and people speculate that this might have been like the cause of Yuri Yudin's like nerve problem, you know, like because it was so uncomfortable. They were like,
or like the nail in the coffin.
Yeah, he was all like
for him.
tense. So they think that that's like what sort of started him like having all these problems. And then by 4:30 p.m. on January 26th, they reached their settlement 41 apparently. And then yeah, they make themselves at home. There's other people like forest workers that are there apparently. Like they're just all having a good old time, you know, having a good old time up until now.
I think this is also the place. This is also where the I'm pretty sure it was the loggers that were like, because I think like on the way people started saying how dangerous the route was, and I think the specific place was where the loggers were like, oh, you don't want to do that. That weather's supposed to be so bad up there.
Really?
And started like, I mean, if they were nervous about the trip, this is the point where you would turn around. So maybe.
Damn. Oh, I didn't know that. They were like telling them to not go. Interesting.
You know, they're basically like, look, that trip is bad anytime you do it, but the weather is supposed to be horrible right now. Like this is like the most extreme time you can do it, is what everyone was telling them.
Shit.
But they
didn't listen.
They didn't care.
They
really didn't care.
They were like
they
fuck
were
you.
So experienced.
We're doing this.
I think they welcomed it.
We're doing this shit.
They wanted it to be scary.
Yeah, they were all about the scare influence of it. They were like, we want to be scared. We want to be bunked. That's what they said.
Yeah.
So
they said they want to be bunked.
They did say that actually in their diaries. They wrote that. Okay, so January 27th, this was the last day that Yuri Yudin would accompany them. His pain was getting worse and worse. Apparently he was like tasked with collecting like geological samples. So he was like, I guess he found like some pyrite and shit. Like, I don't know. He was like the geologist of the group, like for some reason. I don't know. They just kept going. January 28th, Yuri Yudin goes back. He's like, all right, I'm fucking done with this. Like, my shit hurts too bad. And
he seems like he was like super torn up by it too.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure.
Like, really like he kept trying to not go back.
And I'm sure just like the guilt, like the subsequent guilt he felt after, like learning what happened to all of his friends.
Yeah.
He was probably just like, oh my God, like, what did I do? Like maybe he could have saved them or something. Like I just imagine like, yeah, it must have been terrible. He had to live with that.
Yeah.
Poor guy. Yeah. So they begin their hike at 11:45 a.m.
This is when they get their skis, right?
Yes. The weather wasn't great at this time, but they're trekking along. They end at like 5:30 p.m. They, set up their tent. They're, kind of taking rest for the night. We're getting kind of closer to the actual event, but it is just important, I think, to understand what led them to the event, just kind of what the mood was. And like, according to the diary entries, like everything was pretty good. And there's like pictures too that were developed after the fact. Like they were happy, they were having fun at this point, like they really weren't like too stressed. Yeah. So January 29th, they continued the hike. They would rest every few miles. The weather was still like not that great. They were starting to follow actually some of the paths used by the Mansi people. So I don't know if did we clarify this earlier? The Mansi people are the indigenous people of the area.
We just brushed on it.
Yeah. So they're like cool. Like
they're known for being
cool
incredibly kind, incredibly helpful.
Yeah, they're awesome.
Mm-hmm.
So the 29th, continued the hike. They would rest every few miles just because weather was getting, pretty harsh at this point, a little intense. They were following the paths used by the Mansi people, like the hunters. And so then January 30th, a bit harsher weather. They had to take a detour. Right.
Yeah, there's like a storm coming in or something, right?
Yes. Yeah. There's like an intense. It's getting more and more intense. Yeah. This detour was kind of off like what Igor Dyatlov had like planned. Right.
It was a little bit off, but I read that it wasn't very much at all. It was like 500 meters. So it was like really not that far off the path. It wasn't like they were taking some like insane other way around. Basically, they needed to start ascending the mountain, and I guess it like started off bad. Like they woke up late. It's on the 1st of February. They like woke up late. They had to try to get over this pass, which would be later named Dyatlov Pass.
Right.
I think at the time they didn't have a name for it.
No.
But then since they were like ever so slightly off the path now, they kind of were up on like the side of this mountain. You can imagine they had to basically decide, because it was like later in the day and the weather was bad, whether they wanted to head down the mountain about a mile and set up camp in the wooded area where they would be like more protected from the elements, or kind of hang out on the side of the mountain where they were, which was because they'd be able to keep their higher ground. And also they kind of wanted to get more of the practice in, because they were just like all about this hiking experience. They
all
were
about being
committed.
Like tough as fuck, man.
Yeah.
So crazy.
Well, that's what won out. And they, so February 1st, they set up camp on the side of this mountain. The mountain is called Kolatsiakal. And it literally translates to Dead Mountain.
Cool.
So, yeah. So they set up camp on Dead Mountain, and that next day they're all dead.
The next day they're all dead. So
that's all we have. This is when the diary entries end.
Yeah.
And from here on out, it's all
last diary entry was January 31st, and it was normal, nothing crazy, like, and it was basically like that's just how we determined that, like, yes, something happened on February 1st. Okay.
The night of February 1st.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So should we get into the investigations, the search party, like kind of what happened now?
Yeah, let's jump forward a little bit. We're going to get into it's February 12th now. They're expecting to get word from the group. They should be back by now. But when they don't get word from them, it's not like panic ensues immediately, because it was a hiking expedition and sometimes you're a little off on these things. And so they kind of waited out, and the families are starting to get more worried.
That's crazy to me. I just feel like fucking day one after like somebody told me that they were going to be back somewhere, I would freak the fuck out. I would be like,
yeah,
okay, wait, where are they? Like, what are they doing? They're hiking in like the middle of fucking nowhere in like the worst conditions ever. Like, maybe we should take that seriously and like start looking for them.
Yeah.
It's like, no, let's wait until like fucking 12 days later. Let's give it a solid
it sounds
12
like
days.
The families and friends for the most part were like, I need to know where they are. But authorities were like, come on, they're hiking. It's not a big deal. And also, like, it's really hard apparently to find an expedition like this because they're just like out in the snow somewhere and there's so much ground to cover and they
Right.
have to like take out the helicopters to find them. So they're like, let's like give it a few more days and see what happens before we start going crazy and dedicating man hours to do who knows what. So they waited out.
And everybody
then-
was like so tough back then too. They just didn't like, they're just like, oh, they'll be fine. They fucking got their warm jackets. I'm sure they'll be all right. They know how to make a fire. Like, okay, I don't think that we would treat a similar situation the same today.
No, not here. So on the 20th is when the families finally are like, fuck you. We're looking for our
Yes.
relatives. That's it. They demand a search and the search goes through. February 21st, the first search parties start heading out. It went days without anything whatsoever being found.
Yeah, they had covered a lot of ground at this point, the Dyatlov group. So, so it wasn't super easy. It wasn't like, like it was after like a day. It was, they're pretty far out there at this point.
And is this when they enlist the help of the Mansi people?
Yeah, I think they were helping pretty much like the entire time. Again, like this was the indigenous group of the area. Like they were super helpful. They, they really cared about these people. Like they didn't, they were just as like concerned, I think.
Yeah. So they finally ended up finding something on February 26th. And it sounds like it was mostly just by luck that they ended up finding this, but they found the tent.
Oh.
And I just want to like mention again for anybody that's listening that like this is kind of the point where like the story gets like super fucked up. Like it's not chill anymore. It's like kind of hard to joke about. It just gets like
this is when you need to change your diapers at this point. I'm sure you soiled them many times before, but like this is when you really need to put on a fresh one. So
or like maybe a second one, just like
maybe
2 pairs would be fine.
double dose. Why not? Double dose diet.
Yeah. So they find the tent, and at first it doesn't seem super fucked up at all because it's partially collapsed. But note the partial on this because I mean all these things are going to come up later when we try to find reasons for what happened. But the tent at first glance, at least, was like where it should be. It was on a part of the mountain that anybody with experience would have chosen as a good location. It was still mostly put together.
Yeah.
The roof had partially collapsed just because of general snowfall, like the weight of it, because it had been weeks at this point since anyone had been there.
Yeah.
Like 3 weeks, I think.
Like snowfall, like from trees and stuff. I remember like that was a big thing. Like in the diary, it was like, oh, I can't tell if it's like snowing or if it's just blowing off of the trees. That was like a lot of it was just like, it was like just wind, like crazy wind, like just blowing snow around. So yeah.
But they did such a good job with this tent that, I mean, here we are like weeks later and it's still standing at least.
Yeah.
And there was also like an ice pick or an ice axe out front of the tent. And I think that one was like standing weird or like the tripod was standing still. So like there couldn't have been anything major enough to knock any of this stuff off.
Right. Exactly. Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
Yeah. They get inside the tent and it is completely set up. Like they were very meticulous hikers and everything in the tent looks like they had just been there. It was like their food was out or like packed up the way it should be or something. Like their clothes were there, their shoes were there, their gear was there.
Right.
So I think at this point it's kind of like, I think they probably started to get a little bit nervous because they didn't know that they were searching for bodies yet. And now it's like, okay, well, wherever they are, they can't get far without any of their gear, their shoes, or their
fucking shoes,
so what's
especially.
Going on
exactly.
Here?
Yeah, it's like negative whatever outside.
It was negative 20 degrees.
Negative 20. Like that's pretty not.
I mean, I know they're
warm.
tough, but
not that tough. Apparently.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The one thing that they did notice right away about the tent, though, is that it had multiple tears. And at first, they didn't know if this was just like from the elements or what happened, but they brought it in for analysis. And when it was being examined, they noticed that these tears, they had to be deliberate cuts.
Yeah.
And
wasn't it like a seamstress like determined that they were
they first brought it to a seamstress.
Yeah, they're like, hey, which way did these cuts come from, seamstress?
Yeah.
And she was like, oh, clearly from the inside, you idiots. because she would know.
Right. So once they figured that out, I think is when they sent it to somebody more official, because they were like, well, we're not about to tell the entire world that this happened because of the word of a seamstress. But
Hey, seamstresses are pretty important.
I agree with
They
you.
make the world go around. We would not be wearing clothes without seamstresses.
It's true.
Just saying.
It's true.
Yeah.
So they concluded that it was cut from the inside of the tent.
Okay, so chill. That's great. You know, something fucking. They couldn't go out like just a normal way. Like they had to cut themselves out like the most ridiculous way possible.
They had to leave their shoes.
They had to leave their
cut
shoes
themselves out of the tent.
Exactly. Yeah.
So also, and this part really freaked me out because I feel like it took me a little bit to really register this next part. But if I was expecting someone that was inside a tent to be in such a panic that they cut themselves out without their shoes in negative 20-degree weather, I would expect the footprints leading out of the tent to be like crazy.
Yeah,
scattered.
erratic, just all over
like
the place.
Running.
Yeah, nope.
And they were super deliberate with, barefoot, massive snow, negative 20-degree weather. And they were super deliberate. So like the people who were like following the first person, for example, would be like taking steps inside of the person in front of their steps.
Right. Yes, exactly. Yeah. Putting their foot in, like recreating the footprints basically. And it was almost like they were like walking. Like it wasn't like erratic running like you would expect if something fucking crazy was going on. It was like, yeah. So that's scary.
It was also all 9 footprints. So no one that left the tent left from anywhere other than inside the tent with them. I also read.
Great.
Yeah. So they all, which is also crazy to me because there's some theories that like someone was like blown away and they went after him, but like not every single person would have left the tent at the same time in any sort of circumstance like that. And if they did, someone surely would have used the front flap at some point. Like they wouldn't all just come
like, hey guys, we have a front flap here. Like we actually don't have to cut.
Can anyone just use the door?
There's multiple slices, right? It's like multiple. It's not just one slice. Like one person freaked out and like, hey man, like, you know, I know you're freaking out, but like there's a door here. There's actually a flap. We can just zip, you know, zippers aren't hard. Yeah. But no, they had to all cut themselves out. So
yeah. So investigators follow these footprints. They start getting covered with snow after about 500 meters or so, but they can continue to follow them almost a mile. It's like just under a mile to the tree line. The tree line in the nearby woods is where they end up finding evidence of a small fire that was made.
Yeah.
And it's like under a pine tree.
Right.
And so this becomes like a very obvious place that you'd keep looking. So very quickly after finding this fire, they find the first 2 bodies.
Who were they?
It's of Yuri Krivonishenko and Yuri Doroshenko.
Oh my God, the Yuris together?
Both the Yuris.
Oh.
Yeah.
Were they burned?
Yeah, so there's a little bit of weird stuff going on with the 2 of them. They were found laying side by side. They were only in their like long underwear. No, nothing else. Like
nothing
just like
protective.
Thin shirt, no pants. Neither of them had shoes on. One of them wasn't even wearing socks.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Dude. They were laying near a bunch of broken branches and their hands were a little bit scratched up, suggesting that maybe they had tried to climb the tree nearby, maybe to like get a better look. They could
have also escape whatever the fuck was getting them. Like, oh my God. Yeah.
They also could have potentially just been gathering firewood. I mean, there's a few different ways you could read into that.
I was going to say they were probably gathering firewood, but I don't know. Like, why are you like getting your hands all cut up from firewood grabbing?
Maybe. They also didn't do a lot because the fire like wasn't big enough. They said to even last the night. It would have lasted
and it was
like 2
all
hours.
Wet. It was all like all the wood was wet. Like, you know, there's no way that it would have actually burned like to be anything substantial. So, and again, like,
but also just keep in mind that they were in such an okay state of mind and like not super injured at this point that they could like climb this tree. Like they said, like 15 feet up, I think.
Oh my God.
Get a bunch of branches and then make a fire.
Yeah.
So
they had like the awareness to make a fire, which is like hard enough in like any normal state, you know, it's like impossible
in the snow.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And like, but they were like burned too, right? Like, do you want to
The
get in?
tops of their head were very slightly burned. Yeah, we can talk about that a little bit. There's no other at this point we don't know anything else about anything that's burned, but except like I think they said their hands as well were a little burned and like the tops of their heads.
Tops of their
And that's it.
heads? Why? Were they laying near the fire? Were the heads near the fire?
I don't know. I don't know.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So there's that. They keep looking in this area and end up finding 3 more bodies. So they are now moving from the fire, which is about a mile away from the tent, more toward the tent. And as we get more toward the tent, every few hundred feet, there's a body, 3 bodies. So it's as if they had run away and then started slowly trying to make their way back.
I was
to the
going to
tent.
say, yes. Wasn't it like they were laying face down, but they were like facing towards the tent? So it was like, they ran away. But like the way that they were facing, it was like they were scrambling like to get back.
Like they had fallen climbing back, basically.
My God.
Yeah. So the first body they find here is going to be Igor Dyatlov. He is dressed more warmly than the other 2 were.
Yeah.
But more warmly is not, he was not cut
Still
out
not
for
that
this
warm.
weather still.
Yeah.
He didn't have on gloves. He didn't have on a hat. He didn't have on shoes.
Exactly.
He didn't have on socks. So that's a start. Yeah. He originally, if you look at any of these photos of him, it looks like he died in like a defensive state. So people talk about it a lot. But what he was actually doing was clutching like a branch to try to like help him climb, they think.
Or was he using it as a weapon?
Maybe.
Weird.
But he died like clutching that branch, and I think it's like he's kind of like twisted under himself as well, so it looks like he's like climbing.
Yeah.
And then the next one, a few hundred feet away from there, is going to be Zena. She was found just under the snow in a same thing, like a position that looked like she was mid-climb. Like her legs were kind of like twisted up under her. She was dressed slightly better than the first 2 as well. She had like a ski jacket on, ski pants. She had on a hat. But again, she only had on socks. No one had shoes.
Because I mean, putting on shoes takes a long time, especially if they're like, it's like late, like, they didn't have fucking Velcro back then. You couldn't just slap the Velcro on. It's like you had to lace the shit up,
Yeah.
So it's like, they probably were just like, whatever the fuck was going on, whatever scared them. They're like, fuck shoes. I don't care. I'll figure it out. I'll figure it out later.
I mean, imagine what sort of panic you have to be in to be. Also, you're so experienced in hiking, so you know exactly how long you can last.
You know what's going to happen if you're not wearing
negative
shoes.
20 degree.
Exactly.
Yeah, you know what's going to happen, and you are so fucking terrified that you say fuck it. Like I will risk death in a matter of like an hour, rather than be here. So yeah, one more body is found here, and this is Slobodin Rustic. He's found a little bit further up yet. He was only like, I think they said like 1,000 feet or something from the tent. But you have to remember too that it's crazy conditions, super bad visibility. They probably didn't know how close they were, which might be another reason they were climbing that tree. But he had on several pairs of socks. He had on a little bit more clothes. He had on one shoe. So
he tried.
There was a start.
There was an effort.
We also know that he collapsed alive because there was like a little hollow pocket in front of his mouth of like where the snow had melted. So we know that he was like breathing.
So he was breathing. Oh shit.
Yeah.
Wow.
But so when they look at his body, he did die of hypothermia. Same as the other 4.
Okay.
And at this point, everyone died of hypothermia. But he had a really weird skull fracture that they explained looks like the only way that you could get this to yourself is if you like fell in the same part of your forehead over and over again.
Yeah. If you had like repeatedly like smashed your forehead like fucking 50 times or something.
Right.
Like it didn't make sense to just be like, one fall, like whoops. It was like deliberate, like a very like deliberate.
It was cracked.
Injury. Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But it didn't kill him. It was just an injury. Which I think is important to know.
The hyperthermia actually killed him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So yeah, at this point, they don't find any other bodies. They know that Everyone died of hypothermia. You can imagine at this point, the other families are expecting to hear pretty much the same result. We don't know what killed our loved ones, but we know that they died in the cold. They were exposed to the elements. And this is basically the way that this investigation would go for another 2 months. And then they would find the other 4 bodies and completely fuck up everything.
Didn't the Mansi people also help find some of the
Mansi people
bodies?
found the rest of them.
Oh, okay.
Because I think they had like dogs out there as well searching, and it was like the elder involved in the search had ended up finding a pile of shredded clothes.
Shredded?
About 200 and it was about 250 feet from the pine tree. There was like a cache of shredded clothes, and that sounded really weird to me at first as well, but they're going to end up finding the other bodies in this area, and these 4 bodies are much better dressed than the other ones, and they're wearing clothes from the other ones. So like they end up finding Dubinina here, for example, and she's wearing her shoes, her like makeshift shoes that she has are made from Krivanashenko's pants. So I think they just were like slicing up their clothes to make their own clothes.
Yeah, they were like, okay, unfortunately, like our buds didn't survive, but we gotta survive. Like, let's do what we can.
Right.
Yeah, that's
and also
crazy.
I mean, this like blew my mind, this part about the clothes, because it means that they were with the other group at some point, and then this other group that was by all accounts like heading back toward the tent for whatever reason, they died. They took their clothes and then they went in the opposite direction, like continued running because they were further from the tree.
Because whatever was happening like at the tent was just like, no, like we can't go back to the tent.
They thought they could go back at some point. And
At
then
first,
something happened and they changed their mind and were like, no, we must continue on. They took their clothes and they left. That really freaks me the fuck out. So yeah, they ended up finding the bodies like in a ravine kind of.
Oh yeah, like the stream.
Yeah, so now it's May 4th, or I've seen 5th, depending on the source when they found them. But it was like springtime, so the snow's starting to melt. There's like a stream there.
Yeah,
and
so it wasn't always a stream though. Like this is the thing. It's like it wasn't a stream the whole time. You know?
It was completely covered.
It was just packed snow. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
right. That matters because it's like, you know, they say that, oh, well, you know, the missing tongue, the missing eyes, that's like because of like the rushing water, just like deteriorating it. But it's like, dude, that wasn't happening the whole time though. Like this.
Yeah. So I guess we'll mention now that a lot of these people were missing their eyes.
Spoiler alert. Eyes were missing.
Oh, the most gruesome spoiler alert ever.
Sorry.
Yeah. These bodies. So one of the bodies, Kolovatov, he had a badly damaged ankle, but he died of hypothermia. He didn't really have any other injuries. Everyone here is more, again, better dressed than the other crew, but he did end up dying of hypothermia. The other 3 did not die of hypothermia.
No, they
had insane injuries, severe fucking injuries, and no external injuries, by the way.
No,
nothing.
All internal
injuries.
The people, like the doctors, like doing the autopsies, compared the bodies to those of like car crash victims. Yeah, basically,
such extreme force.
Such extreme force. Yeah, and all internal shit going on.
Internal.
So
like
what the hell?
Pressure related or something.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
We can start with they ended up finding Tim Tebow. They found Tebow. He died due to major skull damage. Something cracked his head and he died. And that was that. When they get into Zolotaryov and Dubinina, this is when it gets super, super fucking weird. They had very similar injuries. Like they almost mirror each other, which is weird because they had extremely different statures. I mean, remember, Zolotaryov is the one that was 38 years old and Dubinina is 20. So, I mean, these are 2 very different people, but they both had like insane chest trauma where like their ribs on both their sides were broken. She was missing a bunch of stuff. She was missing her eyes, her eyebrows, her
like the half of her face or something. It was like her,
like her nose,
like all of her soft tissue, like here, yeah, like really, like something had just eaten like half of her face.
Yeah, she also was missing her tongue, and
Yes.
I originally heard again that like, oh well, she was found in a stream, and like this is like decomposition or like animals that would come and take this sort of stuff first, but she wasn't found in a stream, and you can clearly see in photos that she was found like hugging this rock face, basically. Like she's like on her knees in this photo, is like up against a rock face. She wasn't near the water,
right?
And they also found that she had like 100 milligrams of coagulated blood in her stomach.
And what the fuck does that mean?
It means that her tongue was taken like while she was alive.
Yeah. So she swallowed a bunch of blood, basically. It was like she was able, because like if she was dead and that happened, it's like the blood would just, like she wouldn't be able to swallow. Like that kind of mechanism like doesn't work when you're dead, you know? Like it doesn't just go to your stomach. It's like it just fucking pulls out. So it's like, yeah, she was able to be like, like she swallowed
she was bleeding.
The blood, you know? Yeah. And blood
it's like
was
insanely fucked up.
Yeah. That's crazy.
Yeah. And so she died because again, her ribs were broken on both sides. She had a hemorrhage to her heart and just massive internal bleeding. So that's how she died.
Yep.
Zolotarov, very similar. Sasha. He had he was found with like multiple layers of clothing on, 2 hats. He had shoes.
He was like
he had
the best
shoes
dressed.
on. Yeah, he's the only person that had on 2 shoes. Like he was.
If I had to vote best dress, it would be him. I'm sorry. I'm being very, very disrespectful. I will no longer be very, very disrespectful. But he was best dressed.
He was very good dressed. He was very good dressed.
He was good dressed. He was
you
good
have
dressed.
thrown me off so fucking much that I'm just. He also had he had a compass on him. He had his camera.
Around his neck. Yep.
Yeah. Weird shit. But he was found with his eyes missing, his eyebrows missing, his chest was broken, his ribs were broken.
Yeah, his chest was like fully collapsed. Like something
massive
sat
injury
on him or something. Like it was fucking insane.
He had an open wound on his skull. I also saw some people mention too that it's weird that him and Dubinina's injuries were so similar, and that it must have just meant that they didn't happen at the same time. So it couldn't have been some like big, I don't know, like I don't even know what could, like an avalanche, like I don't even know what could have like done that to a person, but it couldn't have happened at the same time and had them have the same injuries like this. So it has to be separate times that it happened to them.
Exactly.
So yeah, now I guess investigators just looked at it and said, the fuck?
Okay, are those all the bodies? I'm about to throw up. I'm done. I'm done talking about all the nasties.
We're done.
Thanks for bearing with us. That was nasty.
It was a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. We have to know though, because like if you don't know any of that, then the case like doesn't seem like a big deal. You really have to understand that
the
these
eyes missing, the traumatic internal injuries, like it makes no sense. And like, so we'll get into the theories now of like what people think. Like we'll get into like the normie theories, you know, the shit that's like, you know, the normies are trying to say what happened. It's like, oh, avalanche, ooh, tornado. It's like,
yeah, let's
that
talk
doesn't
about
explain
the
anything.
avalanche.
That doesn't fucking explain anything. Oh my God.
Let's talk about the avalanche, because that was definitely the first explanation that people go with.
And it makes sense. And it makes sense.
It does make sense at first.
Why you would think that, obviously.
They're on a snowy mountain. They're on the side of a hill. They went rushing out of their tent as fast as they could. Like, of course you think avalanche.
Right. But the tent wasn't buried. They weren't buried. Like,
after looking into it more, like, I would believe literally anything else before the avalanche. I would believe that they were killed by ghosts before I believe that they were killed by an avalanche.
Avalanches cause suffocation. None of them died from suffocation. Like that was not at all in the reports.
The people farthest from the site of the tent were the ones that were the most heavily injured and died from their injuries. How does that make any sense with an avalanche? How could Dubinina and Sasha, when they were completely fucked up and had their chests broken, go that far and survive for that long?
Yeah. No, it's a lie.
But everyone else dies of hypothermia.
Yeah. And so like Russia, apparently like they recently endorsed the slab avalanche theory. And that's like just more bullshit, you know? It's just like, well, it's not like a regular avalanche. It's like a cool avalanche where like, you know, a layer breaks loose from beneath like all the snow and it rolls down the incline, and it's basically less impactful, but it's still it doesn't cause suffocation, but it's like it still causes injury. So it's like,
well, because with an avalanche you could like look at the area an avalanche happened and you would be like, oh, there's an avalanche here.
Yeah.
There's so much damage, and there was nothing like that. So that's kind of like their explanation was like, oh, it was like this like secret avalanche, this like baby avalanche.
Exactly.
And it drives me nuts because every time someone talks about it, they're like, yeah, and case closed.
Yeah. Case closed, atheists. Take that.
Okay. Why was the tripod standing up? How did they get so far with their injuries? How come half of them tried to go back to the tent and the other half...
Why did they find the tent? Like, how was the tent at all visible if there was any kind of avalanche that happened? Like, get fucking real.
And there was a lantern on top of the tent too. I forgot to mention that.
Just perfectly placed on top of the tent, like no big deal, just like sitting there, like having the time of its life.
Don't know.
Okay, that's bullshit.
This just doesn't hold up with me. And they also, I've seen some people say like, what if they were running away from the avalanche and then fell into the ravine? And I think that there's like some confusion there as to what the ravine looked like, because people have like visited the site, like investigators and researchers and just people interested in the topic. And it's like small. It's very sloped. And it also would have been covered in snow at the time. So like you could not have sustained these.
I don't even want to talk about the avalanche anymore. It's fucking bullshit. It honestly makes me mad.
It wasn't a fucking avalanche, guys. We're over. Like, just stop. Just think about it.
I know that we said that we were going to be like neutral and not immediately jump to aliens, but like.
Okay, now we'll be neutral. Starting now.
Okay, starting right now. Yeah. Definitely not avalanche. Maybe aliens.
Not avalanche.
Yeah.
Well, do you want to talk about like nuclear testing a little bit?
Yeah. Okay. So basically, this guy, Vladimir Negaev. I don't know.
Yeah, sure. I'm sure that's that.
So he was like a KGB guy, you know, that old group. He said that they all died because they were kind of unbeknownst to them participating in a scientific experiment. Basically, the government was like launching special purpose like radio probes in unpopulated areas, like specifically to kind of test it off or to test it out. And then under the chloroprene shell of a balloon that had, it was like, of the balloon was a gas and short-lived radioactive isotope, 5-sulfur phosphorus. So yeah, it was whatever. It was like some weird shit that the military was testing out. This is backed up because I guess like rockets have been known to be used in this area. Like they've used this area before in military testing. And at some point, like a missile must have hit one or more of these like balloons that had like the gas in it, you know?
Right.
So they're saying like basically like a missile hit a balloon that was in the area filled with all this shit. And then it caused like a radioactive spill. Because, you know, the people like upon examinations, like they did have signs of damage to internal organs by toxic chemicals. So pulmonary edema, changes in the borders of the heart, apparently. All the organs had some kind of damage. They were like, you know, I don't think we really talked about that yet, where they were like an orangish, like dark color.
Yeah.
Like the color of their skin was like orange and weird, you know? And apparently that's indicative of like phosphorus poisoning. Could be. I don't know. That's one explanation.
I have a lot of problems with this one though, because like not all of them were found with all those issues though. Like only some of them were with those like their internal issues.
Right.
You would have had evidence of this type of massive chemical spill in the area, or like issues like this would have
something
like shown
else.
up.
Yeah, exactly. Like it would have been somewhere else, you know, like they would have tested other areas and found this shit, but it's like, no.
Yeah. And then like a lot of people, they were weird colors, but people involved in the case were like, yeah, that's like mummification.
They were starting to mummify.
In freezing temperatures. Yeah. There also was like I don't know. Lots of them just died of hypothermia. So it doesn't make any sense as to like why, if half of them had these issues, the other half would have just felt okay with just running out into the cold and dying.
Yes, that's the thing. It's like, you can't apply one explanation to all of them. That's why it's so
Right.
frustrating and confusing, because it's like they all have very, very, very different injuries and
Right.
weird shit going on with them. So it's like, yeah, you can't just say like, oh, it's like one like blanket explanation. Like,
Yeah. I also like this. I mean, we can kind of tie that explanation in as well, because people point to infrasound a lot, saying that it was like infrasound, which is like basically low frequencies that you can't hear, but you are hearing, and it's like really disturbing to some people.
Yeah.
And like they've definitely like run tests on this, and it can be like super fucked up, but it's never affected like 100% of a group before. It's normally like 20%.
And it
So the
has
fact
to be
that-
like such insane conditions to even like create that. You know what I mean? It's like,
which we don't do.
no, that
which
doesn't,
hasn't happened.
That doesn't
And
happen.
I've also heard that like for it to cause you to go so insane like that, it would have to like then give you physical damage, and which there was none. And also like just the fact that it would happen to all 9 of them at the exact same time, because even if they were really experienced, again, so like even if like 2 people weren't affected by it, someone was going to stay back in the tent. Someone was going to be like, I need to be here to make sure people are okay. They're not all running out of this tent without their shoes on.
Right.
They're not.
And clearly they all have like different levels of injury, and that happened at different times. Like that's clear.
Right.
So yeah, that's bullshit. Another thing is the secret KGB agents that were infiltrating the group.
God. Let's talk about this one. I hate this one.
I know, but we have to mention it. So basically, Zolotarov or Sasha, Yuri Krivanashenko, and then Alexander Kolevatov. Apparently, they were secret KGB agents. They were hired by the KGB to deliver radioactive samples to a group of CIA agents. And they were supposed to take pictures of spies. And I guess what happened was like, the meeting took place where the KGB agents were meeting with these CIA agents. But then like a conflict broke out, and they all like fought each other. And like, that's how they all died.
So on the surface, at first, at least, this one sounds really plausible to me, because
I like shit like this. Yes, I like secret agent stuff.
Yeah, and so much of it to me too, it was like, okay, like they get marched out of the tent. That would explain that problem. Like maybe they like tried to cut their way out, and that's what happened, or something. Like they took Dubinina's tongue like as a message to the others. Like there's so much cool
and Sasha
shit
was
in that.
weird. Sasha was weird.
There was like a head wound.
Yeah. So Sasha basically like the service records apparently, because he served in World War II, right? But apparently like his service records like had holes and inconsistencies or something.
Yeah, they did.
His sudden inclusion in the group seemed suspicious. Like there was really no clear explanation as to like why he suddenly joined the group. Like what I was talking about before, like him and like Dyatlov like had some kind of like secret connection. I don't know, like that nobody else was really privy to. So.
Yeah, something weird was going on. But
and his body, sorry, I just have to mention this real quick.
Do it.
His body, recently, they tested his DNA with a relative, a living relative, and it doesn't fucking match. So it's like,
weird.
who the fuck is this person? Who is this person?
It's weird. Yeah, no, I mean, there's a lot of really cool shit. And I think the reason I hate it so much is because as soon as I started looking into it at all and got over like the cool shit that makes it sound like it'd be real, it all just started to fall apart. Like, this would be the absolute worst way for a government agency to get rid of people, because all they tried to do after this is cover it up and like silence everyone and like not release documentation on it. And like it has been an embarrassment for the country for decades. Like it is like the one big thing where it just looks like they couldn't take care of their own people.
I mean, Russia is not great at like stuff like this, though. It's like fucking Chernobyl was a pretty big disaster. Like, let's be real.
But if it was like a government program, it's like this is at a time in the Soviet Union when like if they had a problem with something that someone was saying, they would just send them to the gulag. It's super easy to just take them away. They didn't need to do this. They didn't need to like stalk them out into the mountains and whatever and like take them away.
But is it because like there was so much like, I guess a bunch of people knew who the other people were, like the non-KGB agents, like it just would have been too much liability. I don't know.
No, because they didn't know at the time. And instead they like killed a bunch of people that had family that would be looking for them.
Yeah,
like people that everyone just like loved. Like they were university students that were well loved by everyone, that like would clearly be missed. And also they had no external injuries. So like a fight didn't break out. Like the only on the first two bodies, there was some like hand issues that people point to.
There
like
were
could have
some
been
abrasions
fighting,
and like
maybe.
bruises and stuff, but like nothing crazy, like nothing that was like
not fighting with KGB agents,
fighting to die. Like no, like nothing. None of.
Also, they would have been shot. Like they would have been shot.
They would have been shot. Yeah, there would have been some kind of gun.
There's no
evidence.
other footprints around. There's no evidence of a struggle. There's nothing.
All
Nothing
right,
at all.
let's brush that
We're
off.
gonna move
then.
past it.
All right, and I know I did want to touch on this a bit because this is like a bunch of people do say that this was like maybe a cause too, was like that they were killed by the Mansi people, which is just bullshit.
It's
like,
just racism.
I mean, they were like so helpful like throughout the whole case.
Yeah.
Like there was no indication, and like in their diary entries too, like there was no like fear of the Mansi people. Like they were on their trails. They were like, oh, like, you know, I think a hunter like walked on this trail like the day before us or something. It seems like fresh tracks. Like then there was no sense of fear at all. You know what I mean?
No. And they were helpful from the start. They were known for being incredibly kind.
In the investigation, they were very helpful. Obviously, like they helped find the bodies, for crying out loud.
Right.
You know, like they cooperated with everybody. Like they weren't at all vicious people, you know, like no way.
And how would they do this? Like how would they have led them out of their tent to die of hypothermia and give them internal pressure injuries? What?
Okay. So there's an image though. On Tebow's camera.
Okay. Yes.
And this shit is really scary. Okay. It's like image number 17 or something, if you look it up. It appears to be someone following them. It's like a clear figure, like in the trees.
I think it was someone in the group.
It might have been. So that's what they say. It's like, okay, it could either be a Yeti, which like Yeti.
There is a strong Yeti argument in this case.
Maybe Yeti. I mean, we won't go too deep into the Yeti, but
one of the girls, I forget which one, but she wrote in her diary with nothing else around it, no other information from that day. All it says is, we now know that snowmen are real. It was like the Russian word for snowmen.
Oh,
that's all it says.
Okay, it was definitely a Yeti then. Case closed, atheist. Case closed. Yeah, but I do think that it might have been Tebow himself, because like they had like a joke pamphlet apparently. Like they were writing like this pamphlet that was
a
like
newspaper.
Yeah, it was like a newspaper, and they said like, oh, like snowman sighting or whatever. Like,
right.
So I don't know. It could have been Tebow like pretending to be the Yeti. I
think they were playing around.
It's a very creepy photo though. Like regardless.
Out of context, it's creepy. I think probably at the time they were like joking around and it was like cute, and then like knowing what happened and looking back on it, you're like, oh,
yeah,
don't like that.
Bad timing with that joke.
Speaking of the camera roll, we're gonna get into okay. Let's get into our favorite explanation and what absolutely happened,
guys.
And the reason that you guys want your dealers to tell you this story to begin with is because they took a fucking photo of a UFO, and it is the last picture on their camera roll that from the night that they died is a fucking UFO.
Mm-hmm. So this was on Krivonashenko's camera. It's frame number 34. Apparently he took it right before he left the tent. It was like the last photo on his fucking camera. Like, and the other photo was like from the day before or something, where they're all like happy hiking, like whatever. And it looks like two orbs or something. There's like two weird orbs.
It's like moving in the sky in the photo. So it's like super blurry. And the camera was on a tripod. So like, you know, the thing in the sky is moving, not the photo, the camera. It was like, two glowing, or it was like a glowing orange, or maybe two. Mm-hmm. But at the same time that this is happening, like a couple weeks earlier, a nearby village had been reporting a bunch of UFO sightings. Like a bunch of people had seen them.
Yes, and also geologists in the area too had said that they were like working on some local, like nearby mountains, and they saw some glowing and pulsating orbs. In the sky. So it was like there were multiple sightings.
Rescue volunteers did too, while they were searching for them. Thought they saw orbs in the sky.
just going back to the super awesome Mansi people, like they had drawings of orbs, apparently.
Right.
They were like, yeah, like we see this shit all the time. Like this is 100% like what it is.
Yeah. And it kind of brings us back to the way that like the tops of their heads were kind of burned, but also I guess the tops of the pines around the area were kind of burned a little bit.
Oh yeah, who said that?
I don't remember. I didn't write
His
it down.
name is Lev. Okay,
Oh,
Lev.
is that Lev?
Yeah,
Lev wrote that one?
That's our boy Lev. Lev Ivanov.
He was the lead investigator on the case.
He was. Mm-hmm.
He at the time was told that he was not allowed to talk about anything paranormal with the case.
They actively like suppressed that information because he was like fully convinced that something weird was going on. He was like, no, nothing, not a fucking avalanche, not anything like that you fucking think it is. Like there's something weird going on here. Yeah, there's like the tops of the trees are burned. Yeah, he was explicitly told to leave out any paranormal explanation in the official reports. So it's like,
yeah,
great.
And years later, he would come forward as saying that, in his opinion, they were killed by a UFO.
Yeah.
Now, UFOs don't mean aliens, of course, and especially in this circumstance. But, you know, because people like to be like, oh, it was probably military planes and like military testing. But like,
right.
That's not what people report.
That's what Yuri Yudin thinks. So again, I think we said that in the beginning. Like Yuri Yudin is 100% convinced before he died. He was like, yes, no, it's military testing. Like they got fucked up by some kind of weird military test that was happening.
I just feel like if that was the case and it was some sort of like crazy weapon or missile or something, like you would have again seen evidence in the area of something like that. And there wasn't any. And again, like there's no external injuries to these people. So like anything like that didn't happen to them. It doesn't add up to me in terms of like what we know with our military. And the same thing we kind of talked about with Roswell, which is like if this was some sort of like crazy military technology, how do we get this far into the future and still not have any fucking idea what kind of weapon could do this? That
exactly. Yeah. Why wouldn't we be like utilize? Why wouldn't Russia be fucking like running the world at this point with their goddamn like eyeball melting weapon? You know, like they would be king of the world. Putin would just be like sitting there like with the weapon, like yes, I am God, like just shooting all the detractors.
I mean, I think at the end of the day, for me, you just have to keep remembering like what is something that is so fucking terrifying that they would be willing to cut themselves out of the tent, because those are the facts we know, without their shoes on, calmly and carefully walk through the snow to certain death, end up some of them dying while trying to make a fire,
trying to get back to the tent, also
trying to get back to the tent and dying, and then the rest of the group at some point at least meeting up with them, taking their clothing and then running in the opposite direction, and then end up eventually meeting violent fucking deaths in that area. And the type of violence done to them that seems like it had to have been done there and not at the tent because of how serious the injuries were. So I don't know, folks. I don't know.
Hey, folks. It's up to you. You be the judge. You be the jury. You be the executor.
Yeah. And you know what? I will say this before we end this one, because this really pisses me off. People like to joke around about how it couldn't have possibly been aliens. It couldn't have possibly been a UFO. And I've heard a lot of people talk about the case and they'll give such credibility to something like an avalanche or the KGB, like crazy spy story. And then you talk about UFOs and aliens and they're like, oh, okay, yeah, what are we going to get into? Yetis and ghosts too? Where it's like, our government has had programs for decades to study these secret UFOs and aliens. They haven't had programs for decades to study ghosts. So we're going to take it seriously.
Yeah, you're a fucking Project Blue Book talking mouthpiece here. It's like that's exactly what they want you to do, is like just conflate UFOs with fucking Yetis and ghosts. Like obviously a completely different topic altogether.
Yeah. We're not grouping those together anymore. That's what we're doing by bunking you guys, is we're going to be separating the aliens from the other supernatural events. They don't belong together, okay?
Yeah. Yeah, they're their own special thing that we love and that we always, champion.
Yes. Okay.
All right. Well, hey, Dyatlov Pass. That's it. I'm going to throw up now.
Yeah. Like just want to I don't know, sit somewhere and look at the wall for a little while or something.
Yeah, I need to go scream in public real quick.
Yeah.
Just real quick.
Cool. Well,
But hey, thanks for
guys.
listening. You can catch us on some shit. You know, we're on YouTube.
We're on
TM
YouTube now.
Take me to your dealer. Like, just go ahead and search that shit if you want. We're on Instagram, TMTYD Pod.
I think all of our socials are going to be TMTYD Pod.
Yeah, TMTYD.
Our website.
Yeah, Patreon. Yeah, we're doing fucking video now. So if you want to see our faces, like our full faces, like in
And
all
Frank
of their...
will be in our videos as well. So
Frank will be making special appearances sometimes when he doesn't have to pee, which apparently this was one of those times. He does not have to pee, so he's in the full video.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, if you want to see the full video, that's going to be on our Patreon. So check us out. Great. Well, I love you. Talia.
all right, guys.
Talia, say it back.
Being with us today.
Say it.
I love you.
Thank you.
Okay, bye. Bye. Bye.